The stars had never seen anything like it. In the heart of the Andorix sector, where the Galactic Council held its most sacred gatherings, diplomats from over 100 star systems were deep in session. Old feuds, trade wars, and territorial disputes echoed through the chamber's tall crystal walls like routine static. The council was used to chaos, after all. What they weren't used to was silence. True, absolute, bone-deep silence. It happened the moment the first alert hit the council's inner security feed. Unscheduled jump. Not from a council member, not from a recognized trade partner or allied empire. Unknown vessel. Size, extreme. Origin, deep soul system. Human. The word human didn't hold much weight before that day. To most, Earth was a developing world, a young race, bold and loud, but insignificant in terms of military or diplomatic influence. They had barely joined the galactic fold, and their seat in the council was purely symbolic, a courtesy, not a concern. But this ship, this monster, it wasn't symbolic. Councillor Virex of the Auntal Empire, the oldest voice in the chamber, was the first to rise from his seat. His translucent skin dimmed from its usual radiant blue to a murky grey. His voice came out a dry whisper. That is not a patrol craft. The rest of the chamber turned toward the feed. What they saw was something no species in the room could ignore. A warship. No, not just a warship. A floating continent of steel and fury, encased in a black hull that drank in starlight and returned nothing. Spanning nearly 7 kilometers long and half that in width, it moved without sound, but every movement screamed purpose. The Council's AI attempted to scan it. Failed, tried again, failed harder. No readings, no vulnerabilities, no transmissions. Then a voice. Male. Calm. Cold. This is Commodore Renner of the TCS Goliath. Humanity acknowledges your existence. That is all. The chamber erupted into disbelief. Councillor Ileth of the Varn Coalition spat through clenched mandibles. This is a declaration of war. That ship, how dare they park it at the council gate? Others shouted back. No, it's a threat. It's intimidation. They have no right. But none could take their eyes off the screen. The Goliath just hovered. Unbothered. Immovable. Its shape, unlike any known vessel, ignored the standard rules of diplomacy and design. It was built for destruction. Every visible turret, each larger than a civilian shuttle, tracked nothing, but waited like sleeping giants. And then came the second message. To the Galactic Council, we have come not to negotiate. We've come to make something clear. Earth is no longer asking for a seat at your table. Earth brings its own table. A shiver ran through the room. Some of the younger species chuckled nervously, thinking it was posturing. But the older civilizations, the ones who had survived past wars, who remembered what it looked like when a true threat arrived, sat still. They knew. The humans had built something the Council could not predict or stop. The High Chancellor stood slowly, flanked by his guards. His voice boomed, artificially enhanced. You bring war to our doorstep, human? There was a pause. Then Commodore Renner replied, voice steady. We bring remembrance. You forgot what fear feels like. We came to remind you. No one spoke after that. And still the Goliath did not move. Hours passed, but it felt like centuries. The Goliath remained still, casting its massive shadow over the Council's orbital ring like a silent executioner. Inside the chamber, the usual air of superiority and ego had thinned into an anxious fog. Even species with telepathic calm and biological serenity felt the ripple of fear. Humanity had arrived, and they didn't come asking. Commodore Renner's words hung in the air like poison. You forgot what fear feels like. We came to remind you. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. The council wasn't used to statements. They were used to negotiations, compromise, leverage. The humans brought none of that. The High Chancellor called for an emergency security session. Only the most powerful members, those who held real fleets, not symbolic ones, were allowed in. 12 beings sat around a dark table, deep beneath the chamber, shielded by layers of plasma armor and quantum encryption. "We need to know what that ship is," Councillor Duck of the Croth Dominion barked. His voice vibrated the air like a war drum. "Our scanners won't touch it. Their stealth tech is advanced." "Advanced?" Councillor Cyril hissed. "That thing is a ghost wrapped in armor. It could vaporize half the council ring with a sneeze." An uncomfortable silence followed. Everyone knew she wasn't exaggerating. A quiet, gravel-throated voice broke the silence. Councillor Wren, the only one who had visited Earth personally, leaned forward. "They were building something. I saw the factories orbiting Mars. I assumed it was propaganda, vanity ships, but I should have known. Humans never build without anger." "Anger?" Dark asked, sneering. "They're primitives." Wren's eyes narrowed. Number, they're predators. They just had no reason to bare their teeth, until now. The room went still, because deep down, everyone knew he was right. Back above, the Goliath finally moved, but only slightly. A single pod detached from its underbelly, glowing faintly red. It made no aggressive motion, no locked weapons, just a slow, graceful arc toward the council's docking bay. The chamber's screens lit up again. "Unarmed diplomatic envoy," Renner said. "One representative. Meet him, or don't. It changes nothing." Against every rule, every instinct, and every protocol, they accepted. Not out of trust, out of desperation to understand what they were facing. The pod landed. It hissed open, and from the smoke stepped a man, tall, broad, not in ceremonial robes or decorated in medals. He wore a black uniform with no markings, his eyes sharp, movements measured. His name was Mace. The guards aimed weapons. He didn't flinch. "You gonna shoot me?" he asked, voice dry and low. "Be a hell of a first impression." No one answered. He was escorted into the chamber. The same chamber that had echoed with diplomacy for centuries now stood under human boots. The High Chancellor eyed him with measured contempt. "Speak. Why are you here?" Mace smiled faintly. "I'm here to answer your first question." "Which was?" "You wanted to know if the Goliath was a declaration of war." "And?" He leaned forward. "That was just a knock on your door." The chamber froze again. Some flinched, others swallowed hard. Mace continued. "For decades you dismissed Earth, laughed at us, called us backward, unworthy. You sabotaged our trade, redirected colony paths, and armed our enemies. Quietly, cowardly. You thought we wouldn't notice? You thought we couldn't respond?" He glanced at the nearest screen, showing the massive ship above. "But we did. And now, we're not here to join your empire. We're here to show you we don't need it." He paused. "And you're scared because you know we built that ship without your help." He turned and walked out. No one stopped him. The silence after Mace's departure was suffocating. Not a word was spoken in the chamber. Eyes flicked from one council member to the next, each trying to mask their fear behind protocol and posture. But it was there, under the surface. Drenched in sweat, buried in clenched fists, it sat like a shadow across their pride. Because what Mace had said was true. The council had kept Earth on the margins for years. Not through open warfare. No, that would have been too obvious. They did it the way empires always crush threats that rise too fast. Embargoes disguised as regulations, exploration boundaries meant to cut off key resource systems, quiet support of rogue factions that destabilized human colonies. the kind of pressure that made lesser species bow. But humanity hadn't bowed. They built, they learned, they adapted, and worst of all, they remembered. Deep inside the Goliath-class warship, Commodore Renner stood on the observation deck, staring down at the council ring. His hands were folded behind his back, and the view below, millions of lives swirling in lights and movement, looked insignificant from up here, like insects clustered around a lamp. He heard the soft chime of a door behind him. "He's delivered the message," said Commander Stroud, stepping beside him. No resistance. No response. Renner nodded slowly. "Good. We didn't come to fight." Stroud hesitated. "Then why bring this ship?" Renner turned to her with a look that could freeze oxygen. "Because sometimes peace only speaks when it's wearing armor." Below, chaos was erupting beneath the council's surface calm. In hidden chambers, panic meetings sparked like firecrackers. Species once arrogant in their fleets now demanded intelligence reports on human tech. Empires that had mocked Earth behind closed doors were suddenly re-evaluating alliances. Fear had done what decades of diplomacy couldn't. It had forced the galaxy to see Earth. But not everyone was content to watch. In the shadows of the Valen Alliance, an old admiral named Threx, a reptilian brute who had commanded the slaughter of 3 entire moons, snarled at his advisors. "We should crush them before they dig in." He spat. "That warship is a bluff. 1 vessel, no fleet, no allies." His lieutenant spoke carefully. "Their tech is unmatched. The data we have shows plasma core yields far beyond regulated limits. And if they've built one, they've built more." Threx finished bitterly. Still, his pride wouldn't let go. "Then we strike fast, quietly, before they anchor in council space." And like that, the first retaliation plan was born. Back aboard the Goliath, Renner watched multiple ships reposition across the orbital lanes. His bridge crew saw them too. No one panicked. He simply nodded. "They'll test us," he murmured. Stroud frowned. "You expected that?" "I'm counting on it." Then he turned to the main console and typed in a simple command. Across the ship, warning lights glowed. Not red, not yellow. Cold blue. Preparatory status. No aggression yet. Just a reminder that this was no bluff. The humans weren't here for war. But they were ready for it. Admiral Threx's strike force didn't come as a surprise. It came exactly as predicted. 5 stealth-class cruisers, black as vacuum, drifted from the far edge of the sector like phantoms. Their heat signatures were masked, energy dampeners at full power. Each ship had only one job: probe the Goliath, test its response time, scan for weakness. But they had no idea what they were walking into. Inside the Goliath, Commodore Renner stood silent on the bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display. He didn't issue alarms. He didn't rally the crew. He just watched, waiting. Stroud leaned in. "Should we intercept?" "No," Renner said, voice like ice scraping metal. "Let them approach. Let them believe." The bridge crew exchanged quiet glances. It was unnatural, just standing there with hostiles closing in. But they trusted him. Renner wasn't known for fear. He was known for patience and vengeance. At exactly 800 kilometers out, the first stealth cruiser released a payload. 8 microdrones, invisible to most conventional sensors, set to latch onto the Goliath's hull and map its structure. They never made it. Before the drones could cross half the distance, the Goliath responded. Not with missiles, not with lasers, with a pulse. A soundless wave of energy rippled outward from its core, an invisible slap of gravity-warping force that struck the drones like insects in a vacuum. Their circuitry fried mid-flight, metal skins folding like paper in a storm. Pieces drifted into space, lifeless and shredded. The stealth cruisers froze. Then the Goliath moved. Its hull split open, massive armored segments unfolding like blooming steel petals. Beneath them, hundreds of weapon bays revealed themselves. Not pointed, not armed, just visible, just there. A message. Renner finally spoke. His voice filled the comms across the sector. To the 5 vessels shadowing our position, this is your single warning. Earth does not require permission. Approach again, and you will be reduced to memory. The warships didn't respond. They didn't have to. They turned. They fled. In the council chambers below, the scene triggered hysteria. Some demanded sanctions. Others begged for immediate negotiations. But a few, those who had once voted to deny Earth's inclusion in the galactic fleet, simply sat in silence, realizing just how badly they had underestimated the human race. Meanwhile, Renner stood on his bridge and watched it all. "Commander Stroud," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. Transmit a full package to the Council. Let them know this is only one of our Titans, and we've named the next one Judgment." She hesitated only a second before nodding. In the dark expanse of space, power was no longer about numbers. It was about fear. And fear now wore a human face. The data packet sent from the Goliath hit the Council's mainframe like a meteor. Encrypted but deliberate, it opened only upon full chamber authorization. When the seal was broken, what the Council saw wasn't just ship schematics, it was a manifesto, a digital declaration written in cold, factual language that spared no ego, no illusion. There were 9 more Titan-class warships under construction, 2 nearly operational, each stationed in remote systems, orbiting resource-heavy planets once believed to be irrelevant. Earth hadn't just built a warship, they'd built a fleet. Quietly, methodically, without help, without oversight. And now they were announcing it. The document wasn't a brag, it was a notification. Like someone telling you the volcano was going to erupt, and they were letting you know out of courtesy, not mercy. Councillor Eilarth nearly tore her data scroll in 2. "This is absurd. We must launch a preemptive strike, assemble a coalition force, contain the spread of this madness before it fractures the balance of power." The High Chancellor sat still, fingers tented beneath his chin, his face unreadable. "And risk open war?" he asked. "They're building weapons of galactic destabilization. They're building what we wouldn't allow them to buy," Councillor Wren interjected. "What we denied them out of arrogance." Councillor Vyrek stood slowly. He had been the oldest and quietest voice in the chamber until now. "I remember the last time a race built weapons this large," he said. "It was us, 10,000 cycles ago. The cost was genocide." He looked around the room. "We thought we buried that era, but we didn't. We buried the memory. Earth has simply reminded us what it looks like." No one responded. Back aboard the Goliath, Renner reviewed reports from the Outer Rim. Systems previously ignored by the Council were now becoming strategic focal points. Earth's expansion hadn't just been military, it had been territorial too. Mining stations, colonization pods, defensive satellites. They had dug in deep while everyone else argued in committee halls. Stroud approached again, this time with something different in her eyes. "We intercepted a private council transmission," she said. "A splinter faction from the Violin Alliance is calling for direct engagement. They're mobilizing mercenary fleets, no flags, just hired guns." Renner smiled faintly. "Let them come." She hesitated. "Sir, with respect, are we really ready for open confrontation? The Council may not attack officially, but these shadows, they can still bleed us." He turned to face her fully now. "We didn't build the Goliath to survive diplomacy. We built it to survive betrayal." He paused, then added, "And if we bleed, we make damn sure they drown." Later that night, Mace stood alone in a viewing gallery, watching the stars through reinforced glass. He hadn't returned to the Council. He had no reason to. His part was done. But he knew the silence meant the message had landed. The Council wasn't just afraid. They were unraveling. And Earth was no longer asking for a place in the stars. They were taking it. The mercenary fleet arrived without ceremony. 30 ships, fast, ugly, built for raw power, not honor. They came out of warp just beyond the Goliath's defensive perimeter, masked by a dense asteroid field. No diplomatic call, no pretense. This wasn't a declaration, it was a hit. The Goliath didn't react. Not at first. Inside, the bridge was dim and silent. The crew watched quietly as the ships spread like vultures, forming a loose net around the Titan-class behemoth. Commander Stroud stood beside Renner, her voice steady but tight. Multiple vessels armed, shield signatures hot. They're waiting for an opening. Renner didn't blink. Then we give them one. He pressed a single control. Outside, the Goliath's shields dropped, for precisely 5 seconds. It was enough. The mercenaries took the bait like starving animals. 6 of them surged forward, weapons hot, engines screaming. And then the sky shattered. The Goliath's belly split open, not to fire, to unleash. From its undercarriage dropped 24 autonomous drones, each the size of a small ship. No pilots, no negotiations, just rage wrapped in steel. They moved faster than anything the Mercs had seen, turning at angles no living pilot could endure. In under 60 seconds, the first wave of attackers was gone. Erased. Not disabled, not warned, obliterated. The remaining ships panicked, half-turned to flee. The rest opened fire blindly, hoping to hit something, anything. It didn't matter. The Goliath absorbed the blasts like rainfall on stone. Its armor didn't crack. Its lights didn't even flicker. Then it fired back. One broadside. A single wave of directed energy pulses, clean, precise, efficient. 4 ships vaporized. 3 spiraled into each other. The last sent out a distress signal before it, too, vanished in a pulse of blue fire. The entire assault had lasted less than 4 minutes. On the bridge, the crew sat in silence, not cheering, not celebrating, just watching. Renner turned to Stroud. Log the encounter. Mark it as unprovoked. Send the footage to the Council. Let them know we acted in defense. Stroud nodded, swallowing hard. What if they deny it? Renner smiled grimly. Then we release the footage to the outer colonies, to every oppressed world they forgot. Let them see who really protects freedom out here. Back on the Council ring, the response was nuclear. The Valen Alliance denied involvement, of course, called the Mercs rogue elements, swore there was no link, but the other factions weren't buying it. Too many had seen the raw footage. Too many knew what kind of shadow games the Council played behind closed doors. Worse, some worlds began reaching out to Earth. Unofficially, small colonies, fringe settlements, slave-fueled mining outposts abandoned by the Council. They wanted protection. They wanted trade. They wanted someone to finally say no to the galactic elite. And now they knew who to call. The humans. Earth was becoming more than a problem. It was becoming a symbol. The ripple had become a wave. In less than a week after the mercenary massacre, over 60 fringe colonies, many on the outer edges of Council influence, sent encrypted messages to the Terran command network. Some were desperate, some angry, some silent, just pinging coordinates with no words at all. But every single one had the same meaning. We're with you. For the first time in its history, Earth had become more than a world. It had become a banner, and that banner was spreading like wildfire through the cracks in the Council's iron grip. Commodore Renner stood in the strategic command room aboard the Goliath, staring at a massive holomap. Red dots represented Council-approved systems. Blue dots were neutral. But the white dots, new, flickering, pulsing, those were the colonies pledging silent allegiance to Earth. "They're scared," Stroud said beside him. "The colonies, the people, not of us, of them, of what the Council's become." Renner didn't look away. "They're not scared. They're tired of being ignored, used, forgotten." He turned to face the table of Terran officers seated behind him, strategists, intelligence directors, fleet coordinators, all handpicked, all loyal. They've watched the Council treat Earth like a weed to be pruned. Now they've seen that same weed swallow a fleet in less time than it takes to breathe. He stepped closer, voice low, intense. "The galaxy doesn't respect peace. It respects strength. And now they know our name." One of the officers, a grizzled veteran named Branek, leaned forward. "And what do we do now, sir? Take those colonies under our flag? Push into Council space? Make it official?" Renner paused. "Not yet. We let them come to us. We don't ask for loyalty. We earn it. Show them what we are, what we do." "Which is?" Stroud asked carefully. He looked her dead in the eyes. "We protect our own, no matter the cost." Elsewhere in the galaxy, that promise was already being tested. The Trosser 3 mining colony, home to over 4,000 workers, had been under Council contract for generations. Rich in dilithium and plasma gel veins, it had fueled the engines of the rich, while its people lived in dome-housed poverty. When they refused a Council demand to double production quotas, enforcement ships were dispatched, armed and ready to correct the situation. What they didn't expect was the presence of a Terran escort ship, the Argent Dagger, already in orbit. It was half the size of the Council enforcers. Older, not even classified as a heavy cruiser, but the moment the Council ships arrived and hailed the colony, the Argent Dagger responded, not with weapons, but with a single phrase. "This colony is under Earth's protection. Stand down." The lead enforcer laughed. "You don't get to declare protection over Council territory." The Terran captain replied, "We don't ask. We act." The battle lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, 2 Council ships were disabled, 1 left adrift, and the 4th limped away into warp with a shredded hull. Not a single civilian was harmed. The miners didn't cheer. They wept. For the first time in decades, someone had stood between them and a Council gun. Word spread like plasma through dry veins. "Earth protects." That phrase began appearing on outlaw comm channels, on colony walls, on ship hulls, on digital networks once buried beneath censorship and fear. And behind it all, the image of the Goliath, like a silent god watching over the stars, burned into the minds of millions. Back on the Council ring, panic was no longer hidden behind protocol. It was open, ferocious. Meetings turned to shouting matches. Accusations flew across the chamber. Treaties frayed. Old alliances buckled under the pressure of one truth. No one wanted to say out loud. The humans were winning. Not with armies, with presence, with principle, and with fire when it was necessary. Councillor Ilath called for sanctions. Wren argued for negotiations. Virex demanded a return to diplomacy. But it was too late. The image of the Council as a united power was shattered. No single voice could command respect anymore. And behind it all, High Chancellor Koro remained disturbingly quiet. He watched the chaos unfold with cold, analytical eyes. Then, in a private meeting chamber hidden behind layers of quantum encryption, he met with the remaining heads of the Council's Black Division, a covert entity that didn't officially exist. "Operation Duststorm is activated," he said flatly. The 3 agents sitting around him didn't flinch. "Human infrastructure, sabotage. Colonies aligned with Earth must feel the consequence of defiance. Quietly, surgically." One of the agents spoke. "We will not touch the Goliath, then." "No," Koro said, voice hard. "Not yet. That ship is a symbol. Strike it directly. We ignite the war they've been preparing for." He leaned in. "But burn their roots, and the symbol loses meaning." Within the week, 3 colonies went dark. Communications severed. Supply shipments vanished. Power systems destabilized. It was quiet, untraceable sabotage, just like the Council had done to Earth years ago. The Black Division hadn't forgotten how to strangle a threat without drawing blood in public. What they didn't count on was Earth's response time. The first colony, Ilex 9, flickered offline for less than 3 hours before the Hammerfall, another Terran battleship, smaller than the Goliath but lethal, appeared in orbit. Engineers disembarked with supplies. Saboteurs were hunted with neural scanners. Within 12 hours, the colony was back online, and with better defenses than before. The second colony, Aedra 2, was even faster. The moment their systems were hit, they sent a pre-coded burst to Terran command. 17 minutes later, 3 strike craft arrived with a dozen Terran Marines. They didn't ask permission. They landed, secured the infrastructure, restored power, and left behind a message carved into the colony's central dome. "We don't abandon our own." The third colony never even lost power. A disguised sabotage crew was caught before they could activate the virus. The colonists didn't detain them. They broadcast their execution. The Council's covert war had begun, and it was already failing. Back aboard the Goliath, Renner stood before a massive viewing window as ships came and went from the hangars. The fleet was growing. Word had spread. Engineers, pilots, strategists from all over Earth, and even some defectors from Council worlds were joining the Terran cause. Not for credits, for purpose. Commander Stroud approached with a report in hand. "High Chancellor Koro is expected to deliver a speech. Public. Sector-wide transmission." Renner turned, arching a brow. "They're finally breaking silence?" "Seems so. Word is he's going to address the rise of human aggression, try to frame us as the threat." Renner's lips curved in something almost like amusement. "Let him." He turned back to the window. "Every time they open their mouths, the stars lean a little closer to our side." That night, the Chancellor's speech did exactly what Renner expected. And worse. Koro appeared in full ceremonial garb, flanked by ancient banners of peace and order, speaking in tones that dripped with false gravity. "Humanity, while once a valued member of our galactic community, has deviated from peaceful cooperation. Their militarization threatens not just political stability, but the safety of countless systems. Their aggression is not protection, it is ambition. Their warships are not peacekeepers, they are hammers in search of nails." It was supposed to frighten the galaxy. Instead, it unified it, because everywhere that message played, on colonies where Earth had defended, on ships that had seen what the Council's peace really looked like, people remembered who had actually been there when they needed help. The humans. And they didn't come to talk. They came to act. The war didn't start with a declaration. It started with silence, the kind that follows a long scream, the kind that falls across a battlefield after the first strike, when both sides realize there's no turning back. In the quiet void above the planet Varthex, Council Fleet Group 7 had assembled. 12 cruisers, 5 dreadnoughts, and 1 planetary siege carrier. They weren't there on patrol. They weren't answering distress calls. They were waiting for the Goliath. Terran intelligence had intercepted the positioning days earlier. It wasn't a trap. It was an invitation, a dare. On the Goliath's command deck, Commodore Renner stood in full command attire for the first time in years. High collar black, Terran seal etched in red above his heart. The bridge was humming, alive with tension, but not fear. They had all known this day would come. Behind him, Commander Stroud studied the incoming transmissions. The Council fleet wasn't speaking. No demands, no ultimatums. "They want to provoke us into firing first," she said. Renner nodded. "They want justification, headlines, propaganda." She looked at him, cautious. "Do we give it to them?" Renner turned towards the display. The enemy fleet hung there, spread across the starry canvas like a net of steel and arrogance. "No," he said. "We don't fire first." But someone else did. A bright flash exploded near the Goliath's starboard wing, an energy lance, pinpointed and surgical. The shields absorbed it, but the signal was clear. Council Dreadnought Verenth had fired without warning. Across the bridge, systems lit up. Stroud's voice went sharp. "Direct hit, non-penetrating. They've made the first move, sir." Renner didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, voice carrying the weight of history. "Then we answer." The Goliath came alive. Panels shifted, hull plating retracted. Weapon banks bloomed like mechanical petals, dozens of them. Not flashy, not theatrical, just efficient, silent. And then it began. The first Terran volley tore through the Council carrier's shield like it wasn't there. Not explosive, not wild. It was a focused lance of rail plasma fire, cracking open hull armor like paper. The carrier broke into two pieces within seconds, its back end folding in on itself, engine cores flaring like a dying sun. The other ships moved to engage. But the Goliath wasn't alone. 3 more Terran ships blinked into existence behind it. The Hammerfall, the Argent Dagger, and the Ashen Rise. Smaller, faster. Not Titans, but built from the same doctrine. Hit hard, end it fast. They moved in tandem like predators in formation. The Council fleet responded with full force. Beams lanced, torpedoes scattered, EMP pulses flared. And in that void, war returned to the galaxy in full. But this time, it wasn't the Council teaching the lesson. It was Earth. Renner coordinated calmly. "Lock targets. Prioritize dreadnoughts. Rotate shields. Prepare for full spread fire." The Goliath didn't just fight, it adapted. Every enemy shot it, absorbed, fed its AI with data. Countermeasures adjusted in real time. Defense turrets moved like they knew the future. Within minutes, the Council lost 4 ships. A 5th tried to retreat, engines flaring, and was cut down by a missile barrage that detonated silently in its wake. On the Council ring, chaos erupted. Emergency meetings, denials, screams. Some factions called for total war. Others broke off entirely. Several colonies declared independence outright, citing Terran protection as their preferred future. High Chancellor Koro stood alone in the crisis chamber, watching footage of his precious fleet dying in real time. His aides begged for a ceasefire message to be transmitted, but he knew it was too late. You can't negotiate when your lies have already burned. Back aboard the Goliath, the final dreadnought tried to ram the Terran warship in a suicide run. Its captain, desperate, hoped sheer mass could do what their weapons had not. It didn't make it halfway. The Goliath's gravity well destabilizer activated. It wasn't flashy. It simply shut down the dreadnought's momentum by making the ship forget what forward meant. The Council vessel spun helplessly, then disintegrated from a precision strike to its core reactor. Silence returned. This time, it was earned. On the bridge, Stroud exhaled. "It's over." Renner didn't answer right away. His eyes were locked on the battlefield, what was left of it. Shattered metal, floating corpses, debris. "No," he said quietly. "It started." In the days that followed, the galaxy shifted. The Council didn't disband. It fractured. Half of its worlds pulled away, citing mistrust and betrayal. Others surrendered quietly to Terran protection, preferring the cold certainty of Earth's strength to the hollow promises of politics. Border wars flared between old empires, now leaderless. And the Terran fleet? It didn't celebrate. It rebuilt. Colonies once exploited were now fortified. Supply lines were secured not through diplomacy, but through reputation. Trade routes flowed more smoothly under Terran banners than they ever had under the Council. Earth had become more than powerful. It had become inevitable. Commodore Renner stood on Earth's lunar citadel weeks later, staring at the blue marble in the distance. Behind him, banners of the Terran coalition flapped in artificial wind. Officers came and went. Engineers worked in silence. Commander Stroud joined him again. "Is this victory?" she asked. He didn't respond for a long time. Finally, he said, "No, this is balance." She nodded, understanding. "What happens next?" Renner's voice was quiet. "Now we wait, because somewhere, someday, someone will challenge us again. That's the nature of the stars." She smiled faintly. "And when they do?" He turned to her. "Then we show them the Goliath was just the beginning." Above them, in orbit, another ship was being completed. It was bigger, faster, and it bore a single word across its hull in blood-red steel: Judgment. Because Earth had risen, and now the stars belonged to humanity.